The Ralph Lauren Spring Summer show this year inspired me so much that I wanted to make a beautiful long necklace from blue beads. Now, if you've watched my style episodes, you know I don't usually go for long necklaces because they draw attention to the wrong place. But this necklace is totally different, and I'll tell you why later. I'm using shape, textures and unexpected beads combinations to make this necklace. Hello, welcome to The Stylish Maker. My name's Carol. When I watched this fashion show, I was inspired not only by the clothes, which I loved, but also by the jewellery. There was a lot of blue in the show, and as I absolutely love blue, especially paired with white, I decided to make my own long necklace. You know that I don't usually wear long necklaces. I'm wearing one today, but this necklace is busy enough to bring attention to my face. When a necklace has a focal down in your midsection, it tends to draw attention there. Not sure about you, but I want attention on my face, not here. The problem comes when you have a long pendant necklace. The pendant, by its nature of being the focal, attracts attention to that area. And if it's sitting on your belly, then it attracts attention there. If it's sitting at your chest height, it attracts attention there. I want attention here. I've pulled out all my blue beads, well, the ones in the right tone of really blue blues, not aqua or turquoise. I've also pulled out some white and clear beads and some silver to give a little more dimension to my necklace. I have these gorgeous blue and white flower blossom beads in different shapes, so I'll be using those as well. Because it's going to be a very blue necklace, it could be boring, so it's important to use different textures and shapes. I decided to make my necklace from components rather than stringing it, and to add a clasp so that I can double it up as a shorter double strand necklace if I desire. So I'm going to show you how to make the components, and then I'll go away and make a whole pile and come back when I'm done. Otherwise this will be a very, very long episode. I'm going to be using silver plated 20 gauge half hard wire to make my components. Now I use half hard wire simply because it is the right temper to make loops and have them hold. You could use a 22 gauge if you wanted, or maybe an 18. I personally wouldn't go lower than a 20, but that's up to you. Now I am going to be using my one-step looper. If you haven't seen this tool before, it makes making loops really quick and easy, and I'll leave you a video linked below all about how to troubleshoot your one-step looper. Now I'm taking my one-step looper and popping the wire through the hole at the back, and I'm squeezing, which will make a loop. I want to make sure that my loop is centered, so you kind of pull it back just a little bit, just a fraction. There's my loop, and the one-step looper sometimes does not close your loops properly. So I'm going to take my chain nose pliers, and I'm going to hold my loop on the side, lift it up and bring it back down and over at the same time. So up and over, and now my loop is closed. Now I'm going to feed on my beads. I'm going to start off with these little donut beads. Now this one is actually single-sided. It's flat on the back, and if I flip it over, it's actually got a curved front. So I'm going to make sure that the curved front faces my loop. So popping that on, and then I'm going to put on this bead, which I think is about a 10mm check glass druck. Then I'm going to put on 2 of my donuts, and I'm going to make sure that the first one, the top side, is facing the bead, and the second one, the top side, is facing away from the bead, so that they are facing in opposite directions. That's what I have now. And then I'm going to put on my other blue bead, and I'm going to put on my last donut, and I'm going to make sure that the top side, or the right side of that bead, is facing away from the bead. So I've got the right side here. Then I'm going to take my one-step looper and thread it through the hole and bring it down. Now one thing to watch when you're using your one-step looper, if you have a small glass bead here, just be careful to leave a little bit of space so that the jaw doesn't come around and graze a little bit of glass off the bead. I don't have to worry about that this time, so I'm just going to make my loop. Now once again, my loop didn't close, so just taking my pliers and lifting up and over. And the last thing I want to do before I finish this component is make sure that my loops are both going in the same direction. So if my loops were going in opposite directions, like that, then I would hold one loop in each plier, and I would turn my hand so that both my pliers were facing in the same direction. And there is my first component. Now I'm just going to make a whole lot of those, but before I do, I wanted to show you how I'm going to use the bead frame that I have here. This is a bead frame, and what happens is your bead goes in the center. Now this bead isn't quite large enough for this component, but if I add 2 little beads, it doesn't quite fit. So I'm going to show you how I got around that. So just taking my one step looper again, making my loop and making sure it's closed. And then I'm going to put on one of these faceted 3x4mm rondelles, and that one is an electroplated silver. Then I want to put on my bead frame. So I'm going to thread through one hole of my bead frame, and I'm going to bring my wire up on top of the bead frame and pop on my spinner bead. So this is a cobalt spinner bead, and it is about 6mm. It looks a bit weird in there because it's not quite full enough. So I'm going to take a 3mm silver ball and pop that on. And that looks a little better. It looks like it's filled up the space. Now to put my wire through the top of the bead frame, I have to pull it back slightly until it goes inside the bead frame and pull it through. And now I'm going to put on my last rondelle. That's what I have now. And that looks quite good. It looks like the spinner bead and the little silver ball fill up the space. So now I'm going to make another loop in this end. And as I said, be careful when you have a little glass bead just to leave the merest space there so that it doesn't come around like that and shave a little piece off your bead. And then I'm going to close up my loop. For some reason my loops aren't closing today, but that happens sometimes. All I need to do is make sure that my loops are both facing the same way. And there's my component, and I really like this one. I think that the spinner, the cobalt colour of the spinner, works really well with the silver, and putting that little silver ball in there just fills up that space beautifully. And then of course I've got my little rondelles on either end. Now to add this component, I am going to use a jump ring to add it to my other component. Some of them I will use a jump ring and some of them I won't. So to join them, all I'm going to do is take my jump ring and pop on the component and then the other component, and then take my other pair of chain nose pliers and close up my jump ring. And now I have the beginnings of my necklace. Now I'm going to go ahead and make a whole pile of components, and we'll see what happens, how I put them together. Okay, so I've made up all of my components, and as I was making them I realized it wasn't going to work. I have joined them together so I can show you why. I got a little carried away with my components and I made them too large. So for example, this one here, it's just not going to sit right on my necklace. So I've decided to take it apart and to string it. Here's a good example of why it's not going to work right. So if I put that at the bottom, it's either going to hang with a point or it's going to hang with a square, or even if I take this smaller component here, it just doesn't feel like it's going to sit right. So what I'm going to do is take each component and string it onto my necklace. Now, as I string it, I will actually need to add more beads. So I wanted my necklace to measure 1 meter long. So I bend it over like that. You can see exactly what I've done. And you can see here why it's not going to work, because these components are just not going to sit right. They will bend as I wear it. If I catch it on anything, it just won't work because I chose to make them too big. Now, there's a couple of things I need to think about in restringing this. Firstly, when I take out all the loops that I've made and all the jump rings, my necklace is going to be shorter. I need to think about that. I also need to replace these components because these components, I can't string them, they don't have a hole in them. So short of ending my necklace and adding a crimp tube and all of that stuff, I'm not going to do that. So I've decided to replace those components with these beautiful silver beads. So they're really nice. They're a faceted bead and I think they'll look quite good in place of those ones there. That's problem number one resolved. Of course, I'm going to have to add more beads. One thing I do need to worry about is where my big blue beads are. So I want them to be opposite each other, and I don't want them to be too low because that will draw attention down. I want to draw attention up. So these beads will actually move up when I string it, but I want to make sure that these ones at the top are not too high. So I'll have to add some beads in here and potentially some beads in the bottom here. So let's do this. So as you can see, I've strung on some of my necklace just so that I could see what it looked like, and I do like it much better as a strung necklace than I do with the components because it's just going to sit nicer. So as you can see, I have strung it a little differently than I did make the components, simply because I wanted to bring this blue bead down. So if we have a look at it now, let's put it on this side, you can see it's still too high. So I think eventually I'll probably add some more to this, but let's go ahead and string. So what I had done is I'd kind of gotten to this point here. You can see if I move this up, that's that point. And I have added a couple of extra beads here. Now I'm going to put on this one. Now these are a little tricky to put on because there's no real hole in them, but let's find the end of our very long piece of tiger tail. And I think I might tip some of these beads out into my little tray here because they're quite hard to get out of my little cup. And I'm going to put on one of these and one of my large bead. Now I didn't want both sides of this necklace to be the same, so I didn't make the components exactly the same. I did choose to put my blue ones, my big blue ones, in the same place, and those components are the same, but I didn't want everything to be matchy-matchy. Right, let's see if we can find the hole in this bead. That looks about right. Pull it all the way up. And that looks good. And another little 3mm ball. Now I am stringing this necklace using component making theory. And what I mean by that is generally, well, often, you don't always have to do it, but often when you make a component, if we take a look at this one here, it goes from a small bead to a big bead and then back to a small bead. Now, obviously they're not all like this, but this one you can see is, and this one is, this one is. So I'm using that same philosophy with my stringing. So you can see here that I've got that same component. I added my bead frame. I've got that same kind of theory of small, big, small, small, big, small, small, big, small. So you can see that I'm using that same philosophy to string my beads, and I think that it looks really interesting. And I've also used faceted beads. These ones are acrylic. I've used faceted glass. I've used these woven metal balls. I've used a smooth glass bead here. I've used bicon. So there's all sorts of different textures and shapes. And that is what is going to make this really interesting. I'm going to take my component necklace apart because I don't have all of the beads, enough of all of the beads. But I'm going to carry on and string this necklace, taking my necklace apart as I go, which is a little bit heartbreaking, but that's okay. So basically I'm going to snip my component, take off the beads, and then I'm going to string them onto the end of my tiger tail, which is very long because I need it to be long because my necklace is long. So this one, now this one I actually used a bead cap with my square bead because I felt that that was the square and then the bicone looked a little bit weird. So I did add a bead cap to my component. You can see that it just kind of gives a little bit of dimension to the square bead. Okay, so here we go again, trying this on, and I think that looks better. I do think though that top one needs to come down, but if I bring it down it will be really close. And I don't really want this one. Yeah, I do. I think I'll just leave it where it is. And I think I will add to the top. So before I put my clasp on, I'll add a couple more beads to the top of the necklace. Just where it was needed. Gleaming black as night. Cloistered in injustice. Now I want to keep an eye on the length of the necklace because I want it to be 1 meter long, and so I still need to add some beads at the top because I want to bring that one down a little bit. So I'm going to measure it and see how long it is. So it's 45 centimeters. So if I add 2 or 3 more beads on this end, then it will be the right length. So we're going to go with this being our center point. So if we remember that that little blue bead there is our center point, so I might go ahead and switch my bead stopper and put some extra beads on this end first so that I can make it the full length, and then I'll see exactly what I'm doing. I might add some teardrops and some of my little rondelles. So I need 5 centimeters approximately. Let's put on a rondelle. and then one of the teardrops. Oh, I've got 2 rondelles together. That doesn't work. Didn't think about that. Let's put on a little silver ball instead, and then the rondelle. That will work. And then my teardrop. Yeah, that works. But that doesn't add 5 centimeters, does it? So it's about 2.5. So I will finish this component, I think, with another rondelle, or this string, this, I don't know what we're calling it. Put another rondelle there and another little silver ball. That is exactly 2.5 centimeters. So if I did something exactly the same, maybe I could repeat it. Not going to do that though. This bead measures about 16 millimeters. So if I add this with some other things, that will work. I quite like this here. How much does that measure? It measures about 4, about 3.5. So that'll make it slightly longer. And I think that's okay. Maybe I won't add the little rondelle there. Maybe I'll add a little silver, no, I won't add a silver ball because I've got one there. Maybe I'll just add this bead and then another silver ball. That would work. It's about 4.5, and by the time I add my clasp, that'll be fine. So I'm quite happy with that. I think that will work really well. So the only thing I really need to worry about coming up the other side is I want the large beads to be in the same place. So I just need to turn the corner and make up my components and make sure that this bead is in the same place on each side. So let's do that. Now on my second side, I've got my first big bead on, and that seems to make sense to me. I'm just going to continue using the rest of my components here till I get up to this one. Okay, so I'm nearly there for my second or last large blue component, but I am a few beads short because that component starts there. So I just need to fill the space, and I can just do this by putting in one bead. So I'm going to take one of these flat beads and pop it in there. Now it doesn't have to be absolutely perfectly in the right place. This necklace is going to move as we wear it, so it doesn't have to be perfect. And that is about right actually. So now I'm going to put on my last big component. This is what I've got left, and I am going to just fill the space to finish the necklace. This is not the ideal way to design a necklace, but hey, it's working. Now I'm almost at the end and I have some decisions to make, because I could put this component here. It's very close to that one, but I don't think it would matter because it's going to be around the back. Or I could put this one here, which would fill, that's actually 2 components, that would fill the space completely. I think I might go with this one. It may not fill the space completely because, you know, the loops are in the way or they add length, but let's have a look and see how it works. Just popping on this bead because that was a component all on its own, and then we'll go with this one. All right, I'm nearly there. I can see that these ones are in the same place, which is good, or fairly similar, but when I get to this end I am going to be a few beads short. I don't really want to put my bead frame up here. I think that it's kind of a waste to put it at the back. I'm thinking that I might go with another one of these large beads, because that fills a fair amount of space, and maybe one of these. How does that look? Oh yeah, that works. And I'm going to finish off with a little silver ball just because I like to do that. I think it gives a nice little, I don't know, a little finish to the clasp, you know, a step down towards the clasp maybe. So that's what that looks like at the end there. It's hard to see with all these other necklaces on, but this is what my necklace is going to look like. And it's a really long one and I do really like it. I think it will work really well. So now we are going to put the clasp on. Now, if you've never strung a necklace before, I am going to leave you a link in the description box for a video on how to string a necklace and how to design a necklace, because this is not really the way you do it. You usually lay it out on your design board and it's all neat and tidy, and I just made a big mess. So, yep, that's the way it worked today. Now, also, if you want to make the jewelry I'm wearing today, I have on, let me see, my thrifted heart necklace, and this is all one necklace that I made. It's an 8-strand necklace, so I'll leave you links for those tutorials in the description box, as well as for my little teardrop earrings as well. Now we're going to put on a clasp, and I always attach my clasp with a jump ring just in case the clasp fails. I've had that happen minutes before I was about to run out the door to a party. I had to completely restring the necklace because the clasp broke. So you don't want that. So attaching it with a jump ring means that you can just undo your jump ring, put on a new clasp and do it back up again. Makes it so much easier. So we're going to start off by attaching our clasp to our jump ring. So taking your chain nose pliers and your jump ring. So you want to hold the jump ring in your pliers like this with the split at the top, and then all you do is twist your hand down, pop on your clasp, and then we just reverse that process. So holding your jump ring on the side and just move your hand back up. Now, if it doesn't close properly, mine's actually crossing over a little bit. So what I need to do is go up and down and slowly pull away with my right hand from my left hand. If it was the other way round and that you had a gap, you would push, as you go up and down, you would push towards your other hand. So there is my clasp with the jump ring attached. Now with this long necklace, there is a possibility that it'll move around quite a lot because it is long and it might get caught on things. So I'm going to make the attachment for the clasp pretty by using some French wire. Some people use wire guardians to protect the wire and all of that sort of thing. I have stopped using wire guardians, but I'll tell you about that in another video. So this is my French wire, and it looks like a little spring, and I've cut off a piece about 1 centimetre long. It's very delicate French wire, so we want to make sure we're very careful with it. I'm just going to measure my piece against the other one, so putting them at the same spot there, and I'm going to use the flush side of my cutters to cut my French wire. Now you want to be careful not to squish your wire as well. So then I'm going to take the end of my tiger tail, I'm going to pop on my crimp tube, and then I'm going to pop on my French wire, and I'm going to thread it through the center of that spring. Sometimes this can be a bit tricky, so if it's not going through, try the other end and it should go through. So now I have on my crimp tube and my French wire. Now the French wire will want to go down inside that crimp tube, so just be careful about that. So I'm going to put my crimp tube all the way down there and hold my French wire while I put on my clasp. So I'm going to thread my tiger tail through the jump ring, and then I'm going to come back down through the crimp tube. Everything will pull up really nicely. That's what that looks like. And you can see that lovely little loop of French wire. It just adds an extra little touch. Now I'm going to use my magical crimping pliers to squeeze my crimp tube. Now, if you don't know about magical crimping pliers, I will leave you a link in the description box for a video all about troubleshooting your magical crimper. Basically, it makes your crimp tube look like a little bead. So now I'm going to take the end of my tiger tail, which is quite long, and I'm going to thread it through a couple of my beads. My aim here is to hide my tail inside some of my beads. Now this is a good place because I have this big bead, and so when I push that bead up, if I cut this tiger tail about halfway through the length of that bead, it will hide in there. So I'm going to cut it, making sure you cut the short one, not the one with all the beads on it, and I'm going to pop it inside there. And you can see it's totally hidden. Now I'm going to go to the other end and I'm going to feed all of my beads all the way down, making sure that I don't have any gaps. You can see that that has completely disappeared when all of the beads have come up. So now we need to do this end. So I'm going to put on my crimp tube and my French wire very carefully, and just be careful that your French wire doesn't disappear inside your crimp tube. And then I'm going to use a 6mm soldered jump ring, and I quite like to use a soldered jump ring. Don't always have them on hand, but it is really good to use one for this when you have one. And then I'm coming back down through the crimp tube. So there it is, and make sure that you catch your jump ring inside the loop. And now I'm going to take my tail down through a couple of beads. And I think I might hide it in this teardrop one. Okay, so you can see I've got a big gap. So what I'm going to do is just pull everything back down, trying to hold on to my jump ring and pull. Now sometimes this doesn't work, and what you will need to do is pull everything down like this, just carefully. So now everything's pulled up. Now you don't want it to be too tight, you still want it to be able to move. It's a rookie mistake that lots of people make. I'm just going to pull it back just a fraction. I think it is a little tight. There we go. Now I'm going to take my crimping pliers and give it a squeeze. So squeeze, turn and squeeze several times, as many as you need to make it work. That's what that looks like. And now the last thing to do is to get in here and cut off my end. Now because I want it to hide in that bead and it will kind of move down with gravity, I'm going to pull my end out and fold my necklace back kind of on itself, and making sure I cut the right one, come in here and snip. You can see that that has just disappeared. Now before I show you this necklace on, I want to show you something. I got a bit carried away. Because I didn't use many of these beautiful blue and white beads in my necklace, I made another necklace. So let's have a look at this one. I have round, square and oval shapes of these beads. And that is what makes this necklace interesting, because if I had just used round beads, it wouldn't be as interesting as it is with all these shapes. So I started with a round bead, and then I put a square on either side, and then I put an oval, and then I put a round bead and then another square. And I continued the oval, round, square pattern all the way up. Notice though that I went square, oval, round on this side and square, oval, round on this side. So I flipped the design. And then when I got to the top of this necklace, these round beads have really large holes. So I was worried about my crimp tube disappearing inside this bead. So I put on a little blue bead. This is a 4mm faceted round glass bead. Now I didn't use any French wire with this because I used this beautiful white soft flex. That is this necklace, and I'm going to show you this on in a minute too. But I got even more carried away and I made another blue necklace. I'd like to take a moment to thank the members of the Style Makers Network for making this episode possible, and to ask you to consider joining my membership. It costs less than a cup of coffee per month. Over on the Style Makers Network, you can join our monthly challenge, and depending on the tier that you choose, you can also participate in Zoom calls and live streams, and you'll get weekly vlogs. You'll also get access to the discussion where you can ask me anything at all and I will answer all of your questions. So maybe have a think about that. I'll leave you that linked below. So here is necklace number 3. Now this necklace could have been really boring because it's all blue. So I decided I needed to use different shapes and faceting to make it look more interesting. So I started in the center with a blue bicone, and then I used these 2 round discs or coins, and then I've got my faceted AB finished teardrops. Notice that they are both pointing in, so the round part of the teardrop is facing the center bead, and I wanted it to do that so that when it came up like this beside itself, they would be going the same way. Otherwise these ones would be upside down and these ones would be the right way up. So that's what I did. So the pattern here was teardrop, and then that center group again, coin, bicone, coin, teardrop, coin, bicone, coin, etc. And I went all the way to the top. Now when I got to the top, it wasn't quite long enough, and so I had a couple of extras of these teardrops. So I just added another teardrop and another coin. Now this time I used a beautiful blue soft flex. It's a gorgeous colour, isn't it? The colour there is called Tanzanite, and you can just see it poking out from the beads there, so that looks kind of cool as well. So let me show you all of these necklaces on. Okay, so here are the 3 necklaces on. I think they look really cool, and I think that I could add even a 4th necklace at about this length here, maybe. I do have another necklace. This is a really old one that I bought for about $5 many years ago, and it is actually broken. You can see here that it wasn't made very well. The loops aren't very good. The silver beads have lost their shine. So I'm wondering if I should remake this necklace, and then it could be my fourth one. It is made with components, and every single bead is a new component. For some reason it's got a jump ring here with a little chain. I don't know why. The only problem is that I don't have any more of these beads, and they clearly need to be replaced. So I was thinking that I could replace that with that. It's not the same size, but I could always put two of them together, or I could just add another bead here and there to make up for the fact that it was shorter. Let me know, should I remake my necklace, or should I just undo it and reuse the beads for something else? So what do you think of my beautiful blue necklaces? I actually really love them, and I can see me wearing them with lots and lots of things actually. Now here's another option for you. I have just taken off my plain blue necklace, and I have doubled up my long necklace and wearing that with the flower blossom one. Of course I could still add this one, and then I've got 4 strands of necklace. So there's lots of options here for you in wearing these 3 necklaces. One of the things I thought about was making a triple strand necklace, or even a quadruple strand necklace, but I decided not to do that because it gives me more versatility. I love my pearl necklace that I just had on, but I can only wear it like that. So I thought by making 3 different necklaces here, it would give me versatility to just wear it. You know, sometimes I might just wear this one, sometimes I might wear this one, or maybe these 2 together, or maybe these 2 together. So there's lots of versatility in how I wear these necklaces, rather than just having one multi-strand necklace. Now remember, if you enjoyed this one, to hit that subscribe button and give me a thumbs up. And if you are subscribed but you're still not seeing my videos, then perhaps you might consider joining up to my newsletter, and I'll leave that linked below for you. I want to thank you so much for watching today. Have a wonderful day, and I will see you again soon.